Let's get into some of the stuff last night. I think the headliner, right, is that Bucks-Sixers overtime game. The Bucks climb back from down 19. I think the Bucks are getting a little too much credit and hype for last night. I think it's a combination of things, right? But I saw Twitter and social media people talking about Giannis is different. Oh man, here come the Bucks, right? I know they've been playing well. I understand that. But, big picture, my takeaway from the game, I feel like if you're Philadelphia, you should feel pretty damn good, right? You got no Seth Curry, no Joel Embiid. And I also think that Doc low-key sandbagged their defense. I mean, they played Giannis straight up late in that game. And to Giannis's credit, he did what he did. In overtime, that's the headliner. Giannis takes over in overtime. He's different. And I'll say this, I think the big difference is he's been shooting his free throws much better, right? And so that allows him to be more aggressive downhill in overtimes and in late in game. But you saw him slow down the pace and then hit that big three as Ben Simmons was gapping him in the overtime. That to me, I still think is fool's gold, man. I don't want to keep beating a dead horse here. But did you see, I think it was Monday, I was playing the soundbite from the All-Star game where Giannis was mic'd up. I didn't throw this one in there, but there was a segment in there of Jokic trashing Giannis's shot. He was like, you shoot like this. He was clowning him. And, they're having fun with it. But, I mean, it's true. If you're a shooter and you see Giannis shoot, you go, I'm going to let him do that. I'm going to let him do that. And so he knocked that three down. But mark my words, there will be a big game in the playoffs, and he will settle for a three, and it will cost them the game. I'm not saying that they can't win the championship or they can't make a deep run here. I'm just saying there's going to be a game where everybody's going to be like, man, Giannis should have put his head down and got downhill. Instead, he pulled up for a three. He's not a shooter. The more he fools y'all and thinks that he is, eventually it'll be a problem when it matters. But again, the hungrier, healthier team won the game. And oh yeah, by the way, it took them an overtime and climbing back from a 20-point deficit. So, I mean, if you're the Sixers, again, I think you feel all right about how it went down. I think what happened was you had Giannis's heroics late with the combination of the big news of the trade to acquire PJ Tucker, all of that in one night, and everybody's like, oh, here come the Bucks. Here come the Bucks, the new favorites, right? Now, I'm not saying, Vegas has them as it, but, there's all of a sudden a new Milwaukee Bucks hype train. So let's talk about the move because it's clearly a great move, right? You give up the two DJs, Augustine, and I don't even know the other kid's name. He don't play enough for me to know his name. Light-skinned brother with the braids. He's like a fourth-string center. Is it DJ Wilson? Something like that. Pretty athletic. But look, I don't think either of those guys were going to be in the rotation in the playoffs except for spot minutes, right? If someone's in foul trouble or you need to buy 2 or 3 minutes, they may pop in as insurance. But as the rotation tightened, I don't think they were going to use him. DJ's just too small. I know he can get a bucket for you. He's a vet. But I don't think they gave up much for PJ Tucker. Now the question becomes, what does PJ have left? That's kind of been a debate amongst the league as PJ has sat out there on the trade market, right? He will be 36 in May. Very similar to what I was talking about with Draymond yesterday. He's an undersized defensive big, so his minutes aren't created equal. He's had a long journey to the NBA, played overseas, right? And what he's asked to do and his specific skill set on the floor, he plays some rugged minutes. So is he washed? That's the question. But again, I think it's well worth the risk for the Bucks, who they really didn't give up much. So I thought it was a great move. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched a ton of Rockets games. In the beginning of the year, I was fascinated with them and the return of Wall and all that. But during this losing streak, I've stopped tuning in. But for me, when I do tune in and when Tucker was playing, he just seemed like a guy that was disinterested to me. I think he was just taking Harden's lead and just flat out dogging it out there. I didn't see a washed player. I saw a guy that had just packed his bags. So I think that it's going to work out. I think we're going to see the PJ Tucker of old reinvigorated with this Bucks roster on a contender. And now the Milwaukee Bucks have a closing five of Giannis, PJ, Middleton, DiVincenzo. That may be the one guy that is interchangeable with somebody else. And then, of course, Drew Holiday. So let's look at the matchups, particularly in the Eastern Conference. First and foremost, against the Brooklyn Nets, look, they now have the two defenders that have given Durant the most trouble in recent playoff matchups. Now, I know a lot of you are going to scoff and say, well, no one gives KD trouble. True, like no one shuts KD down. I understand that. We're talking about the greatest scorer of this generation. But the guys that have made him less efficient and that have given him trouble are one, Drew Holiday. We saw that in, I believe there were two Pelicans playoff series against Golden State with KD. And then, of course, PJ Tucker and the Rockets, we know they've had several series. And it was the physicality of those two, the ability to get under his hips, kind of dislodge him, bump him off his spots in the high elbow. And so they have those two guys for that Brooklyn matchup. Moving to the Sixers, now I know Tobias struggled last night, right? But Tucker is a guy that you could stick on him. I don't think you could ask PJ to guard Joel. I understand he's a fire hydrant. He's super strong. I think that's just too big of a size difference. I don't think you can do that. But I do think in a potential Heat series, I think you could put him on Bam. As strong as Bam is, he's not nearly the size of a dude that Joel is. Joel is a much larger guy. I think PJ can handle Bam. Joel, that's too much of an ask. And then against the Celtics, I'd be very curious to see how PJ Tucker would do against Tatum. Because much like he guarded Durant, I could see the same type of thing happening where there was a lot of dislodging and bumping him off of his spots and just making him uncomfortable with his strength. So overall, again, I don't understand why everybody's celebrating last night's victory, but maybe it just goes hand in hand with the acquisition of PJ Tucker because, yeah, I think that this is a move that we can eventually look back and say that was the move. That was the move that helped them get over the top. Now it's just got to play out. Now, the trade gates have seemed to open here with the deadline just a week away, next Thursday, and there were some sneaky good pickups yesterday. The Miami Heat traded Myers Leonard to the Thunder for Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza's just been sitting at home, resting his old knees, and getting ready to, be traded. It was eerily similar to the Andre Iguodala move a year ago, right? Where Andre never showed up for Memphis. About this midway point toward the trade deadline, Miami picks him up. And now they get Trevor Ariza, who is of the same ilk, a veteran defensive wing. So that's just a huge move for Miami, man. I think they've caught fire here, and they add another vet for the depth that can kind of help make up for the Crowder loss, possibly. I think that was the guy that you circle and say probably shouldn't have let him go. I don't know if they had any choice. Meanwhile, Myers Leonard, he might be done because as soon as OKC acquired him, they announced he will not suit up for us, right? We all know what happened. And it looks like he may get the blackball treatment. Like Myers Leonard, he may be out of the league because we all know if you're talented enough, teams will put up with you. And that's really across all walks of life, right? Whatever field of work you're in, if you bring a lot to the table and you're talented and you fuck up or you have, whatever the problem is, people are more willing to deal with it, right? But when you're on the fringe of the league anyway, you might be done. The other move was Torrey Craig to the Suns. Now, he was in Milwaukee. I got to be honest with you, I'm slipping here. I didn't even see what the deal was for. I'm assuming maybe it was to shift salaries for the move for the Houston and PJ Tucker deal. So I don't even think the Suns gave anything up. And it's just a quiet, nice little move. And you know what it signifies? It signifies the Suns, they know they're real contenders because Torrey Craig, really what he is he's a guy you throw on a Kawhi or a LeBron for a 5-minute period in a playoff series and just let him use his fouls. Let him be physical, rough somebody up. He's kind of like Jay Crowder insurance. So I'm not saying Torrey Craig will be in the Suns rotation, but he's a nice insurance policy and a guy in a playoff series, you could see him check in and serve out a couple hard fouls.